Hi everyone, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
So, Kat, you don't eat meat?
I do not.
I don't eat meat?
Right.
What are the stories behind that?
Well, I became vegetarian about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, for over, environmental concerns mainly, also ethical concerns, but more about environment. Yeah, just trying to kind of take practical steps to reduce my impact on, carbon emissions by not contributing to the industries that produce them.
Okay.
How about you?
I was very, very young, possibly only around 2 or 3 years old, when I decided that I did not like meat. I did not like the taste of it. This may have just been because I was a fussy child eater, because it affected all sorts of other things that I didn't eat for a long time, some of which I now quite happily eat, but
I see.
Meat has never found its way back onto the list of things that I like.
Okay.
And growing up and learning more about, as you mentioned, environmental things, maybe even health things, animal cruelty things, it's just kind of cemented the decision as okay, since you've gone this way anyway, these are good reasons not to sort of force yourself to try and eat meat just to fit in or for anything like that.
Right. Whereas I still do like the taste of meat.
Yeah, have you tried the Impossible Burger? We're going to be discussing that today.
I've tried the Beyond Burger.
The Beyond Burger,
it was so convincing that I actually sent it back the first time I tried it.
You thought it was meat?
I thought it was meat.
Okay.
And they told me it wasn't. I was shocked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big fan of the taste of meat and beef anyway, I probably won't ever bother having one of these, except maybe as an experiment.
Okay.
Just because, as I'm happy to eat a vegetarian burger made up of beans and vegetables and that sort of stuff.
Bean burgers are good too.
Okay, well, let's read through this Newswatch article and talk about one story to do with these burgers and one story to do with something quite different.
McDonald's tests market with plant-based burger. McDonald's entered the plant-based food market last year with a 12-week trial that took place in Ontario, Canada. 28 restaurants sold the PLT burger, which contains a plant-based meat substitute, lettuce, and tomato. To produce this burger, McDonald's has partnered with Beyond Meat, one of the big names in the booming meat substitute industry. McDonald's is far from the first fast food business to experiment with plant-based meat products. Beyond Meat has already made meatless chicken for KFC and meatless breakfast sausage for Canadian chain Tim Hortons. Meanwhile, Impossible Foods worked with McDonald's rival Burger King for some time to make a meatless Whopper, which the chain began offering in August 2019. The plant-based meat trend is clearly here to stay. Burger King's meatless Whopper has sold well across the US, and customers are asking other chains, including Wendy's, to include similar items on their menu. McDonald's started with a small trial as a learning experience, but you're likely to see plant-based meat products in a McDonald's near you sometime soon.
Models' protest draws attention to mental health. During Milan Fashion Week last September, Gucci's models walked down the catwalk clad in gowns that looked like straitjackets. One model, Aisha Tan Jones, held up their hands to display the message, "Mental health is not fashion." They were protesting Gucci's apparent disregard for the serious mental health problems some people face in order to advertise its brand. Aisha said it was time to take a stand. "I felt like it was my responsibility to speak up for those people who are struggling with their mental health on a daily basis," they said. Aisha added that models are always being judged for their appearance and many have mental health issues. Aisha, along with other models at Gucci's show, is donating their earnings to mental health charities. Gucci's creative director said the straitjackets were meant to show how society can constrain people and that Gucci's clothes can help overcome this. However, a critic from the New York Times said this message wasn't obvious and added that fashion companies should think about how their designs could be perceived. Aisha identifies as non-binary and uses them, their pronouns.
So, we're starting out with the first story here, which is about McDonald's testing the market with a new plant-based burger.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I often think, I remember when you used to read news about these being developed, and they always seemed like the big problem was they'd be really expensive.
Exactly.
And so I couldn't see how you could get them in a nice burger restaurant, but I couldn't see them becoming fast food.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess they've gotten to definitely a new point in the industry now.
Yeah, where it's cheaper to make more of these.
Yeah, so the first sentence says, McDonald's entered the plant-based food market last year with a 12-week trial that took place in Ontario, Canada. Now, when we say plant-based food, we're often talking about things like vegan food, or things that just are made without animal products and without any sort of additives in them that are not based on plants. Yeah. So
so it's basically, this isn't like a burger made out of, like, it's not really soybean stuff?
No. It does have some beans in it, as
Yeah.
I remember. They use beets to make it red. They use something like applesauce, wasn't it? To turn it brown when it cooks.
Yeah, there's been a lot of different types of veggie burgers. Some kind of use something called corn. Some have just used kind of just straight up vegetables mashed together.
Yep.
There have been a few different versions of these kind of products, but the idea with this kind of plant-based food is that it's supposed to taste so like meat, you wouldn't know that you're not eating meat.
Right.
The texture, the taste, everything is supposed to be right. So we see that 28 restaurants sold the PLT burger, which contains a plant-based meat substitute, lettuce, and tomato. So BLT is a pretty common sandwich, bacon, lettuce, tomato.
Exactly.
So this is a bit of a play on that, but instead of the bacon, or in this case the beef, they've got a substitute. A substitute is something that replaces something else.
Right.
So if you think of like teachers, if your normal teacher is off, maybe they're sick, you would have a substitute teacher.
Right.
It's used a lot in sport. If a player is injured or the coach wants to change the tactics, one player would go off and a substitute player would come on.
Yeah.
So here we're taking out one thing and we're putting in another. It's called the substitute, and it's this plant-based meat.
So it is meant to look and taste like meat, and that's why it's considered a substitute and not just a different ingredient entirely. So to produce this burger, McDonald's has partnered with Beyond Meat, which is the company name, one of the big names in the booming meat substitute industry. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I'd heard of the name, obviously, before. Yeah. They're one of the big ones that you go, okay, they're doing this. They've spent a lot of time working on this kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. They have food scientists and nutritionists and some very, very expert chefs kind of working on that worked out how to cheaply produce something that tasted and acted like meat. So that, again, you wouldn't know the difference. So meat substitute industry is changing a lot, as we said. And McDonald's is far from the first fast food business to experiment with plant-based meat products.
A few different companies are having a go, really, because there's a market out there for it.
Yes.
People are interested in it, as we see later. Let's look at a couple of examples already on the market.
Yeah.
Beyond Meat, so the same company, has already made meatless chicken for KFC and meatless breakfast sausage for Canadian chain Tim Hortons.
Oh.
A chain is basically a whole bunch of almost identical looking restaurants or stores that have the same name, sell the same products, appear in every city. So McDonald's, KFC, Pizza Hut, Domino's Pizza, they're all chains.
Yeah, or even places that don't do food, like I think of Zara. Zara is a fast fashion clothing chain.
Yep.
Or anything like that.
7-Eleven, Family Mart.
Yeah, those are
they're
chains.
all chains. Starbucks coffee, Mr. Brown coffee, they're chains.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of similar, like they have their stores in every city, usually many, many stores in that city. And when you go in them, the menu's exactly the same. The decoration's pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah.
The uniforms, the staff wear are the same. And and they're all owned by the same big company at the top.
Yeah. And I think that's why, they appeal to people in some ways because...
they know what they're getting.
Exactly. You can feel kind of comfortable because it's very familiar anytime you go into one.
Yeah, as it's not like, what am I going to get at this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what Beyond Meat is doing, but they're not the only big name in the fake meat business.
Right, of course. So meanwhile, Impossible Foods, which is another meat substitute maker, worked with McDonald's rival Burger King for some time to make a meatless Whopper, which the chain began offering in August 2019. So when we talk about Burger King being the rival McDonald's, you might know that McDonald's and Burger King are about the same popularity, maybe many places in the world. I guess some people might say that McDonald's is a little more popular. But Burger King is the main rival to McDonald's, which means that it competes with McDonald's. It's the one that is trying to be the best or, trying to be on the same level. They're both trying to do the same thing, and they're both competing with each other. That makes them rivals.
Yeah, like Samsung and Apple for phones.
Mm-hmm.
You can also have sports teams that are rivals.
Yeah.
They're the team you want to beat most, really. You've got a kind of a particular thing with that other team, or maybe if they were individuals, it could be that person. He's my rival. He's the one I compete with the most. I really want to beat him and I will try hard.
Yeah, but that doesn't make them your enemy.
That's true.
You don't have to dislike
be a friendly
somebody.
rivalry.
Yes, exactly. You just have to want to do a little bit better than they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next paragraph says, the plant-based meat trend is clearly here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
If something's here to stay, it's going to become a kind of a permanent thing. It's not just going to be a trend that appears and disappears. It's going to be a permanent thing. We will always have this kind of plant-based meat burger from now on. That's what it seems from this evidence.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I haven't seen as much of it in Taiwan, but I know that it is spreading across the world. Mm-hmm. So soon enough, it may get here and it may be here to stay as well. Yeah, so Burger King's meatless Whopper, for example, has sold well across the U.S., and customers are asking other chains, including Wendy's, to include similar items on their menu. Now, Wendy's is another big burger chain or big burger franchise. They are in almost every city in the U.S.
I think they used to be in Taiwan because my wife remembers that one from when she was a kid.
Okay.
But it closed down. So when we were in the States one time, she saw a Wendy's and was like, I miss this place. I want to go in there and get something because I remember it from my childhood.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out the most to me about them is having chili and having square-shaped burgers.
Okay, she just liked the picture with the girl with the pigtails.
Oh, yes. That was the original founder's daughter, apparently.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So back to McDonald's, who are obviously kind of getting in on this plant-based meat idea trend. McDonald's started with a small trial as a learning experience, kind of to see what do people think of these burgers? Will people buy them? What feedback do they have? The sentence continues, but you're likely to see plant-based meat products in a McDonald's near you sometime soon, because if everybody else is doing it and they don't, they lose out.
Exactly.
So, even if it takes them a while to get their kind of PLT burger right, they're going to keep going on with it. So they're just trialing it to learn a few things before they go big.
Exactly. And so, it may be coming to Taiwan pretty soon. In fact, I think Family Mart just started selling the Beyond Burger patties.
Interesting.
Yes.
I'll keep an eye out for that. Okay, we have another story coming up in just a moment, but let's take a short break right now. Welcome back to our second part of our Newswatch article, everyone. The first thing we're going to look at is the title. Model's protest draws attention to mental health. So by model here, we're talking about a fashion model. This fashion model protested against something. They said this isn't right. And what they were protesting about or drawing attention to was mental health. Your mental health is how you're doing emotionally. It's connected to your physical health, but they're often treated in two sort of different ways and with different approaches.
Yeah, exactly.
So your physical health will be, are your bones and organs working? Whereas mental health is about how you're feeling, how you're kind of coping.
Yeah.
There is some physicalness under it with your body and the chemicals it produces. But as well as giving drugs for it, you can also treat mental health by counseling, by other means.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to do with your emotional health and also maybe your psychological health, like how you perceive the world around you. Because some people with poor mental health can believe or see things that aren't actually there.
Yep, and they can't really kind of function in the world as normal, so they need a bit of special help because they can't either work with other people or they have an issue like that.
What are we talking about here with this model drawing attention to mental health? The article starts out, during Milan Fashion Week last September, Gucci's models walked down the catwalk clad in gowns that looked like straitjackets. So now we have these two words that one is more related to fashion, one is a little more related to the mental health that we are talking about. Yeah. So when we talk about a catwalk, that might sound like taking your cat for a walk, but it doesn't have anything to do with cats. It does have to do with walking. It's where the models have a very long stage that goes out into the audience so that they can walk down all the way and walk back and give the audience a very good view of the clothes that they're wearing. Yeah.
I guess it's called a catwalk firstly because it's narrow compared to other things, and cats would walk on a narrow thing.
Yeah,
I also wonder,
sense.
it's the way the models walk. Models work with a certain type of stride. They kind of swish the hips a little bit
and I
in
think,
the same way that a cat would walking on a wall.
Yeah, and also catwalking is a verb in like the way that you see models walking. It's a very particular kind of walk.
Okay.
All right, but what are they clad in, which means what are they wearing?
Yeah, clad is an odd word. It's a verb, but it's only really ever seen in the past tense like this. Like you say someone is clad in something, these people are clad in this. As I say, it's only really seen in this kind of past tense or passive way. So there we go. They were clad in, they were wearing gowns, so dresses kind of things, but they looked like straitjackets.
Yeah.
Straitjacket, it's not as much as a jacket as a piece of clothing that in the old days, and I'm not sure if still in the present day, they're put on people and the arms are either round the back or people don't put their arms in this. Their arms are kind of trapped behind them.
Yes.
And this jacket will kind of stop them from moving and thrashing their arms around and kind of waving and hurting themselves or the people around them.
Yeah.
It was used in the past just to kind of put people with mental difficulties in a way that they were kind of out of the way and couldn't hurt each other. Or themselves.
And it became kind of a symbol of this person is so mentally unstable that they are dangerous.
Yeah, and I think it was probably used on a lot of people who weren't actually that dangerous. Just anybody who might end up in a mental hospital might be forced to wear one at certain times.
Yeah. And it was kind of embarrassing.
That's why we talk about them not really being used as much unless it's like, no, this is kind of needed because if not, this person could really hurt themselves. They're that unwell.
Yeah. So one model, Aisha Tan-Jones, held up their hands to display the message, mental health is not fashion. So Aisha was modeling in this show, but they also didn't have their hands in the jacket. So they were wearing something that looked like a straitjacket, but was not a straitjacket. And you might notice that we use held up their hands, instead of saying her hands or his hands. This is because Aisha identifies as non-binary, which means they use them, their pronouns, which are gender-neutral pronouns, not him, not her. But either, maybe more than one gender or no gender at all, or their gender changes. Yeah.
Yep, so we're not talking about plural here. It is one person making this protest. Okay, so that's Tan-Jones, were protesting Gucci's apparent disregard for the serious mental health problems some people face in order to advertise its brand. So the protest, Gucci was they were disregarding something. To disregard something is to treat it as not being important or not being relevant, not being as important as something else. So their apparent disregard means it looked like they were ignoring the seriousness of mental health and just saying, hey, this is a cool idea, let's use it for a fashion show.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if people might feel upset at this image,
or maybe they didn't think about it at all.
It's likely they didn't think or they didn't think it was important enough, and that's why it was a disregard for serious mental health issues.
Exactly. Yeah, so they use this in order to advertise their brand, or Gucci was advertising its brand. Advertising here just means, taking something that you use to kind of sell more dresses, more fashion, more products. Advertising is supposed to pull people in and make them interested in what you're selling.
Yep. So, Aisha said it was time to take a stand. To take a stand against something is basically to stand up and say, this thing is wrong, or I'm not going to accept this thing. I'm going to take action. I'm going to speak up. All of those kind of things. Basically just to say that you're not happy with a situation, you don't find it acceptable, and you want something to be done about it. Either you're doing it yourself, or you're saying other people need to do something as well.
Yeah, exactly. So what did they say about it? I felt like it was my responsibility to speak up for those people who are struggling with their mental health on a daily basis, they said. So Aisha probably knows plenty of people in the fashion industry, or even outside the fashion industry, who are struggling with their mental health and would be kind of upset by the image of a straitjacket being used as fashion.
Yeah, just to kind of sell a new line of clothes or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. So we have this phrase here, on a daily basis. If people are struggling on a daily basis, that means it's every day or it's almost every day. And it's probably something that might otherwise not be a big deal, but if it is happening on a daily basis, then it could really start to wear you down.
Yeah. Of course, it can be used in a positive way. If someone says, I exercise on a daily basis, it means they exercise every day.
Yeah.
But if it's someone struggling with their mental health on a daily basis, it means every day, or as Kat said, almost every day, they're maybe struggling to get up, to leave the house, to kind of really get, live their lives and be happy.
Yeah. You could also use this phrase on a blank basis for other times, like on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis even, just however often...
6-monthly basis.
Yeah, however often this thing happens.
Yeah, it's an adverb of frequency used as a phrase. So Aisha added that models are always being judged for their appearance, and many have mental health issues. And that's right, models are often, they need to look a certain way. They need to be thin, they need to be tall, they need to look, beautiful and have symmetrical figures and all of this. So
and a certain face.
Yeah, and everybody's always watching them, and if they don't look right, they'll be criticized. And I'm sure the people who kind of hire them for the show, oh no, you're not right, you're cut, you're starting to get too old, something else is not right.
Or you're gaining too much weight.
Exactly. So because of this, it's understandable that many have mental health issues because of what they have to do to stay in this race, of the pressure of being a model and keeping up this appearance. So being judged by everybody, by cameras, by critics, by your own co-workers or something like that. So yeah, it's not surprising that many models do struggle with their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are they doing about this? Aisha, along with other models at Gucci's show, is donating their earnings to mental health charities. So when they're doing this protest with the mental health is not fashion on their hands, they're not just giving lip service, which means, they're not just saying it to get attention.
Yeah, they're doing stuff.
Exactly. So what are they doing? They're donating their earnings. So whatever they make from the show, they're going to donate or give it to a mental health charity or several mental health charities, just out of the goodness of their heart, or out of, the fact that they believe this is what they should do.
Yeah, when you donate something, you don't expect anything in return. You're giving this away because somebody else needs it more than you do, and you feel it's right for them to have it.
Right.
So what about Gucci? What did Gucci say about this issue, about this protest? Because it was very public, it made the news.
Yeah.
Well, we see in the article that Gucci's creative director, so that would be the person who put together the show, the outfits and so on, said the straitjackets were meant to show how society can constrain people and that Gucci's clothes can help overcome this. So to constrain means to force someone to follow a course of action. It can also mean to put very severe limits on the size or the scope of something.
Yeah.
And it can even mean to imprison someone.
Right, which is what straitjackets do.
Exactly. And so logically, you can see the connection of, society is making us feel trapped and like wearing Gucci's clothes can help you feel freer and break free of these limitations, these restrictions.
Sure.
So you can kind of see the idea. It's just obviously they didn't think it through very well.
The execution was not great.
Yes, exactly. There are other ways you could demonstrate this without kind of making light of, or to use the word earlier, disregarding people's mental health issues.
Exactly. And especially, in this day and age when mental health is being talked about more and is a big concern for a lot of people, it feels a little bit tone deaf.
Yeah, it's not something that can just be sort of made fun of or turned into an opportunity to make some money.
Yeah, exactly. However, so now we're talking about the response to Gucci's response, a response to a response. However, a critic from the New York Times said this message wasn't obvious and added that fashion companies should think about how their designs could be perceived. So who was saying this? It was a person who is a critic. Now, the New York Times is a very well-known international newspaper, and a critic will be somebody who is kind of an expert in whatever they are talking about, be that movies or food, or in this case, fashion. And they're a person who basically gives their opinion on how well this thing was made or how well it was done. So they, talk about whether the Gucci show was a success or, how the quality of the designs.
What worked, what didn't, what was great, what was interesting, what was the message behind it. They're people whose opinions are respected. They're not just a person saying, oh, this is what I think.
Yeah.
These are people who are paid for their opinions because of their experience or qualifications in this area.
Exactly.
And so the critic said the message wasn't obvious. It wasn't clear from this straitjacket show that Gucci was trying to say, oh, break free from your limits.
Yeah.
The critic added that fashion companies should think about how their designs could be perceived.
Exactly.
The word perceive is a verb. It means how somebody sees something, but it's not just kind of seeing the outside. It's seeing the sort of depths and meaning. And how you perceive something is like your personal opinion kind of thing. You're not just looking at what something looks like. You're sort of saying, this is what I think it is and what it means to me.
Yeah, because everybody has a different experience that makes them look at things differently, especially when it's something that's very symbolic.
Yes, if it's something obvious like, okay, it's a building, you wouldn't say, I perceive the building. But if you're looking at a sort of a hidden message, some kind of metaphor, then you would talk about perceiving this and how you see it, basically. Like some person might see it one way, another person might perceive it a different way.
Exactly. So, I think it's important for not only fashion companies, but any other kind of company to kind of...
any advertising.
Yeah, to run whatever ideas you have, run them by some normal people first and see what they think.
Yeah, and a wide range of people to see what, A perceives might be different from what Group B perceives.
Exactly.
And some people think, yeah, that's okay. And other people say, no, that's not right. That's not right at all.
Yeah.
And so that's what we mean. You've got to take all these perceptions, to use the noun form of perceive, into account. Well, that's all the time we have for today for our Newswatch article. Thanks for listening, everybody. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And we'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.